So today we're jumping into a book from way back in 1937 that has completely fascinated millions of people with one single, really bold promise to reveal the secret to getting wealthy. And Think and Grow Rich wasn't just some author's opinion. Nope, it was the result of looking at the lives of over 500 of the most successful people in history. Let's dig in and find out what this whole philosophy is all about. Okay, so the entire philosophy of this book, the whole thing really hangs on this one powerful idea. That our thoughts, they're not just random sparks in our brain. When we focus them, when we mix them with some real emotion and a super clear goal, they can literally, physically change our reality. It's a concept that sounds simple, right? But really grasping it is a whole other story. To really see how powerful this can be, we've got to look at a true story from the book. It's about a guy who had absolutely nothing but a thought, and he used that thought to land a partnership with one of the greatest inventors who ever lived. Now, the way the book says this is so important. This wasn't just some casual dream, a vague, I hope this happens. It was an obsession, a definite, burning desire. See, Barnes didn't just want to work for Edison. He was absolutely determined to work with him. And that one little distinction, it changes everything. For pretty much anyone else, this is where the story would have ended. Game over. But Barnes's desire was so intense that these massive problems were just bumps in the road. He actually hopped a freight train, arriving with nothing in his pockets but the absolute power of his conviction. So he shows up at Edison's lab, looking, and this is in Edison's own words, like an ordinary tramp. But the inventor, being a genius, saw something way beyond his raggedy clothes. He saw this unwavering resolve, a look that said, I'm not leaving until I get what I came for. So Edison decided, okay, I'll give this kid a chance, and start him off with a pretty low-level job in the office. And this, right here, is where most of us would have just given up. For months, Barnes did basic, unimportant work. But here's the key. In his own mind, he was already Edison's partner. He was just waiting for the world to catch up. And his big chance finally came, disguised as a new invention that nobody else really believed in, the Edison dictating machine. While Edison's own salesmen were like, nah, this'll never work, Barnes saw his moment. He saw his opening. He just knew he could sell it, and boy did he. His success was so huge that it led to a business partnership that made him an incredibly rich man. And more importantly, it proved that his very first powerful thought had become a solid physical reality. So Barnes's success wasn't a fluke. It wasn't an accident. It was the direct result of a very specific philosophy. This story is just the opening shot in Napoleon Hill's classic Think and Grow Rich, a book that promises to lay out the very secret that allowed a guy with no money to literally think his way into a fortune. But this philosophy wasn't just something Hill dreamed up. No, he was on a mission, a challenge given to him by one of the richest men in all of history, the steel giant Andrew Carnegie. Carnegie was convinced there was a formula for success, a secret sauce that could be taught to anyone. And he basically told Hill, your job is to spend the next 20 years studying guys like Henry Ford, Theodore Roosevelt, and Thomas Edison, figure out what makes them tick, boil it down, and share it with the world. And that's exactly what Hill did. And the absolute number one starting point of that entire formula, the very first step toward getting rich, is this huge distinction. It is not about wishing. Wishing is passive, it's weak. This is all about cultivating a burning desire, an obsession so powerful that it just crowds out any other possibility. Now, Hill didn't just leave it at that, like some vague, abstract idea. No, he laid out a very clear, super practical blueprint for turning that burning desire into actual cold, hard cash. This method is all about making the goal as real and concrete as possible. Notice how specific everything is? An exact amount of money, an exact date, a written plan. But that last step, step 6, that's the real magic. It's about using repetition to convince your subconscious mind that this isn't just possible, it's already happening. Hill was so sure about this formula that he even had it checked and approved by Thomas Edison himself. Okay, but even if you have a burning desire and a perfect plan, there's one massive roadblock that stops most people dead in their tracks. And Hill illustrates this with another incredible story. So picture this, it's the gold rush. A guy named R.U. Darby and his uncle catch gold fever. They head out west, work their tails off, and then they hit the jackpot, a vein of pure, shining ore. They were so sure they were rich that they borrowed a ton of money to buy heavy machinery to haul it all out. They were right on the edge of paying off all their debts and making a massive profit.
And then it was just gone. The gold vein completely vanished. They kept drilling, pushing farther and farther, but nothing. Finally, totally heartbroken and defeated, they just quit.
So they sell all their expensive machinery for just a few $100 to a local junkman. But this junkman was smart. He didn't just guess, he hired an expert mining engineer. And the engineer's report was just shocking. The Darbys had failed simply because they didn't understand how fault lines in the earth worked. The gold was right there, a mere 3 feet from where they had stopped drilling. The junkman went on to take millions from that very mine.
You see, one of the most common reasons for failure is just the habit of quitting when we get hit with a temporary setback. Darby himself later said that learning this one lesson, to never stop 3 feet from gold, is what made him a fortune later in life. He learned that persistence isn't just about trying hard, it's that constant, sustained effort that finally turns a burning desire into a real thing you can touch. So, if persistence is so important, what is it that makes us want to quit in the first place? Well, Hill argues that it's our own internal roadblocks, the ghosts of fear that are living inside our own heads. He pointed to these 6 basic fears as the root cause of pretty much all of our negative thinking. They create doubt, they create indecision, and they are the enemies of persistence. These are the little voices in our head that tell us to quit when we might be just 3 feet from gold. And you know, even though the title of the book is Think and Grow Rich, Hill makes a really important point. He says these principles don't just apply to money, they apply to any goal you have. And that the greatest riches in life are often the ones you can't count. Things like great friendships, happy families, and that deep sense of peace that comes from knowing you are in control of your own destiny. So in the end, the big secret that Hill spent 2 decades figuring out, it wasn't some magic trick. It's the deep understanding that our mind, when we learn to control it, is the most powerful force we have. A burning desire, backed up by rock-solid persistence and a mastery of our own fears, truly has the power to change our world. The whole philosophy has been laid out for us, so the real question isn't whether it works. The question is for you, what's the one goal that's so important to you that you're willing to go that extra 3 feet?